Welcome to Forensic Science. Now we are covering Chapter 2, the crime scene. Arrival at the crime scene. Upon arrival at a crime scene, the first responding police officer to a crime scene is responsible for acquiring medical assistance for injured victims. Medical personnel should avoid disturbing evidence and approach the victim by an indirect route. Detaining any potential suspects or witnesses. Statements are taken from victims, witnesses, and suspects. Securing the crime scene to the greatest extent possible. The boundary is sealed off, and guards are posted at the entry to the crime scene if needed. All civilians and unauthorized personnel are excluded from the crime scene. Calling for any additional personnel needed, such as other officers and/or forensic investigators. The personnel required depends upon the nature of the crime scene. Securing the crime scene. The lead investigator will determine the boundaries of the scene and establish the perpetrator's possible path of entry and exit. The boundaries of the crime scene must be secured with the crime scene tape, ropes, or cones. The secured area should include the area where the crime took place and the surrounding area where physical evidence may be located. Once the boundaries are secured, guards may be posted to restrict access to the crime scene. A detailed log is kept of personal movements in and out of the crime scene. This log includes personal names and times of entry and exit. Investigators should never do anything that might alter the crime scene, including smoking, eating, drinking, or littering. Just thinking about LA Noir. Searching the crime scene. The search for physical evidence at a crime scene must be thorough and systematic. The search pattern selected will normally depend on the size and locale of the scene and the number of collectors participating in the search. For a factual, unbiased reconstruction of the crime, the investigator, relying upon his or her training and experience, must not overlook any pertinent evidence. Physical evidence can be anything from massive objects to microscopic traces. Photography sketches and notes are the three methods for crime scene recording. Ideally, all three should be employed. However, as is often the case, personnel and monetary limitations may prohibit the utilization of photography at every crime scene. Crime scene notes. Note that note-taking begins when the investigator is contacted and requested to report to the crime scene. The crime scene notes should begin with the identity of a person who's contacted the investigator, time of contact and arrival at the crime scene, preliminary case information, personnel present on arriving on those being contacted. Crime scene notes should contain a personnel log, all observations made by the investigator and the time observations were made. Notes are taken in a uniform layout concurrently. As the observations are made, notes are written in a bound notebook in blue and black ink. A lot of those can involve legal reasons as to how to make a professional notebook in law, in research, and otherwise. Digital photography. A digital photograph is made when a light-sensitive microscope captures light on each of millions of tiny picture elements called pixels. The light is recorded on each pixel as a specific electric charge, which is read by the camera as image information, which is stored as a file on a memory card. The number of pixels is directly related to the resolution of the picture. Photographs with more pixels show increasingly good resolution, or more detail and sharpness in photographs. The number of pixels that a camera features is usually measured in millions of pixels or megapixels. Crime scene photography. Advantages of digital crime scene photography include the ability to observe images immediately after taking them, ensuring important photographs are clear and show the best possible detail. The ability to preserve the details of the crime scene exactly as they were found. Crime scene photography. Crime scene photographs should record the area in which crime actually took place and all adjacent areas where important acts occurred. The most important prerequisite for photographing a crime scene is for it to be in unaltered condition. Each crime scene should be photographed as completely as possible in a logical succession. The sequence will show the overall scene first, then work done to individual pieces of evidence that jurors in the trial will be able to easily relate back to the larger scene. The 4 minimum photographs required at a crime scene are overview photograph, medium range photograph, close-up photograph with a measurement scale, such as a ruler. Overview photographs of the entire scene and surrounding area, including points of exit and entry, are taken first. Taken from the outside borders, taken from the outside borders of the scene and from various angles. If the crime scene includes a body, photographs must show the body's position and location relative to the entire scene, including a visual tag and objects recorded in multiple overview photographs to help visually piece the scene together. The sequence of a crime scene photograph shows the proper progression of photographing the scene. The sequence begins with an overview photograph of the entry of the victim's bedroom, showing evidence markers in place. The medium range photograph shows the evidence marker next to the door, denoting a cartridge case. A close-up photograph shows the cartridge in detail with a scale in the photograph. Medium range photographs show the layout of smaller significant areas of the crime scene, taken with evidence markers in place to show the spatial relationships between and among pieces of evidence in greater detail than overview photographs. Include at least one photograph of the center of the scene. In violent crimes, this usually includes the site where the victim was found and the surrounding area. Close-up photographs are taken last and show greater detail of individual objects or evidence. Taken at a 90-degree angle to the object, with or without evidence markers and scales, scales should be placed up close to the evidence as possible without affecting it in any meaningful way. After the 90-degree photographs are taken, photographs from other angles may also be taken. The most important close-up photographs are those depicting injuries and weapons lying near a body. After the body is removed from the scene, the surface beneath the body should be photographed. Videotaping crime scenes. As with still crime scene photography, the crime scene video must include overview, medium range, and close-up images. A narrated crime scene video combines photography and notes. It is important that only one person narrates and no side conversations are captured on the video. Some video cameras can produce still photographs, but the quality is often poor. Therefore, still photographs from a digital camera are still required. Body-worn cameras. Cases with conflicting eyewitness accounts prompted calls for police to be outfitted with body-worn cameras, BWCs. These cameras have at least one microphone and internal data storage. Body-worn cameras are an efficient tool for collecting evidence and recording crime scenes. Sketching of the crime scene. Third method of crime scene documentation is sketches. Crime scene sketches clearly show the layout of a crime scene, illustrate the relationship in space of all significant items and features, clarify objects and features already described in notes, and shown in photographs. Crime scene sketches show measurements over long distances and topography of outdoor scenes, depict possible paths of entry, exit, and movement through the scene. The rough crime scene sketch. A rough sketch is created at the crime scene, contains an accurate depiction of the dimensions of the scene, and shows the location of all permanent objects and features. This sketch is not drawn to scale, but it should show the accurate measurements of the distances and significant objects or scene boundaries. All rough sketches include title block, information on the case, crime scene, and person creating the sketch. Legend with identity and dimensions of objects in the sketch, compass showing the north direction, body containing the sketch itself. A little example of a rough sketch diagram of a crime scene showing various important details recorded or observed during a walkthrough. The finished crime scene sketch is created from the information in the rough sketch, but it is drawn to scale with care and concern for appearance. The current standard method utilizes computer-aided drafting, CAD, programs to create the finished sketch. Computer-aided drafting programs also allow for the creation of three-dimensional finished sketches. Here we have a more cleaned up version of a diagram sketch. Searching the crime scene. The walkthrough is the initial survey of the crime scene. Perpetrator's point of entry and exit are located. Indirect path is taken to the center of the crime scene. Obvious items of evidence are located and documented. The condition of the scene are observed and recorded. Special attention is paid to the item or conditions that suggest timing of the incident or do not appear to belong. There are multiple different search patterns that can be employed following the initial walkthrough. The search pattern will be chosen based on the specific details of the scene at hand. Line strip search pattern. One or two investigators start at the boundary of a crime scene and search in straight lines across to the other side of the crime scene. Grid search pattern. Two or more investigators form a grid by searching in line patterns that overlap and are perpendicular to each other. Spiral search pattern. One investigator searches a spiral path from the center of the crime scene to the boundary outward, or from the boundary of the crime scene to the center inward. Wheel race search pattern. Several investigators search in straight lines from the center to the boundary outward, or from the boundary to the center inward. Quadrant zone search pattern. The crime scene is divided into smaller sections or zones. One or more investigators are assigned to search each zone. And here is just a better look into the different diagrams of search patterns utilized. Vehicle searches must be carefully planned and systematically carried out. Investigators search interior and exterior of vehicle. The vehicle may be searched at the crime scene or at the police department or crime laboratory garage. Procedures for collection. Often many items of evidence are clearly visible, but others may be detected only through examination at the crime laboratory. For this reason, it is important to collect possible carriers of trace evidence, such as clothing, vacuum sweepings, and fingerprint scrapings, in addition to more discernible items. Procedures for collection. Investigators handle and process physical evidence in a way that prevents changes to the evidence through contamination, breakage, evaporation, accidental scratching or mending, or through improper or careless packaging. The use of latex gloves, disposable forceps, and sanitized equipment reduces the chance of contamination. Whenever possible, one should keep evidence in its original condition as found at the crime scene. According to packaging, each different item or similar items collected at different locations must be placed in separate containers. Packaging evidence separately prevents damage through contact and prevents cross-contamination. The well-prepared evidence collector will arrive at a crime scene with a large assortment of packaging materials and tools ready to encounter any type of situation. Disposable forceps and similar tools may have to be used to pick up small items. Unbreakable plastic pill bottles with pressure lids are excellent containers for hairs, glass, fibers, and various other kinds of small or trace evidence. Alternatively, manila envelopes, screw-cap glass vials, or cardboard pill boxes are adequate containers for most trace evidence encountered at crime scenes. Ordinarily, mail envelopes should not be used as evidence containers because powders or fine particles will leak out of the corners. Sealable plastic evidence bags are ideal for drug evidence. Small amounts of trace evidence can also be conveniently packaged in a carefully folded bag using what is known as the druggish fold. Evidence from arson scenes should be packaged in airtight metal or glass containers to prevent the loss of accelerant vapors. If biological or blood-stained materials are stored in airtight containers, the accumulation of moisture may encourage the growth of bacteria and mold, which can destroy evidential value. For packaging biological evidence, the material should be allowed to air dry before being packaged in butcher paper, manila envelopes, or paper bags. Contamination is a key concern during collection of DNA containing specimens such as blood, saliva, sweat, or skin cells. Contamination can occur either by introducing foreign DNA through coughing or sneezing onto evidence, taking over items of evidence, talking over items of evidence, touching one item, then touching another with the same pair of gloves, or if items of evidence are incorrectly placed in contact with each other during packaging. To prevent contamination, the evidence collector must wear a face mask and a lab coat, use disposable latex gloves, and work with disposable forceps when collecting evidence that may contain DNA. Disposable coveralls, shoe covers, and eye protection offer added precautions to avoid contaminating DNA evidence. Chain of custody. The chain of custody is a list of all persons who came into possession of an item of evidence, as well as when and where they were in possession of it. Continuity of possession or the chain of custody must be established whenever evidence is presented in court as an exhibit. Adherence to standard procedures in recording the location of evidence, marking it for identification, and properly completing evidence submission forms for laboratory analysis is critical to the chain of custody. This means that every person who handled or examined the evidence and where it is at all times must be accounted for. Obtaining reference samples. Standard reference samples, physical evidence whose origin is known, such as blood, buccal swab, or hair from a suspect that can be compared to crime scene evidence. The examination of evidence, whether it is soil, blood, glass, hair, fibers, and so on, often requires comparison with a known standard reference sample. Submitting evidence. Evidence is usually submitted to the laboratory either by personal delivery or by mail shipment. Care must be taken in packaging evidence that will be sent by mail in order to prevent breakage or other accidental destruction during transit to the laboratory. Most laboratories require that an evidence submission form accompany all evidence submitted. Case information provided on this form enables the laboratory analyst to make an intelligent and complete examination of the evidence. Crime scene safety. Crime scenes frequently present the investigator with biological specimens of unknown origin. The investigator has no way of gauging what health hazards they may contain. Use caution and protection at all times. Personnel should always wear latex gloves and possibly chemical-resistant clothing, Tyvek-type shoe covers, a particle mask, respirator, goggles, or face shields when potentially infectious material is present. Gloves should be changed often. Personnel should maintain a red biohazard plastic bag for the disposal of contaminated gloves, clothing, masks, pencils, wrapping paper, and so on. When processing and collecting evidence at a crime scene, personnel should be alert to sharp objects, knives, hypodermic syringes, razor blades, and similar items. Eating, drinking, smoking, and chewing gum are prohibited at the immediate crime scene. Search and seizure protocols. The removal of any evidence from a person or from the scene of a crime scene must be done in conformity with Fourth Amendment privileges. The right of the person to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The United States Supreme Court has determined that search and seizure without a court-approved warrant is justified in 4 cases: the evidence of emergency circumstances, or the existence of emergency circumstances, the need to prevent the immediate loss or destruction of evidence, a search of a person or property within the immediate control of the person, provided it is made incident to a lawful arrest, a search made by consent of the parties involved. Search and seizure landmark cases include Mincy versus Arizona. The court dealt with the illegality of a 4-day search at a homicide scene and decided that the evidence was illegally seized because a warrant was never issued and the circumstances of the case did not justify a warrantless search. Michigan versus Tyler. A fire destroyed a business establishment leased by Lauren Tyler and a business partner. The court decided that the evidence obtained from the initial search was legally seized, but evidence obtained from searches 4, 7, and 24 days after the incident were illegally seized. And once again, that concludes our next chapter, right around the 24-minute mark. Peace.